Brian and Kenzie on Q101, and coming to the Vic Theater on Friday, June 6th is our guy, Jeremy Piven, doing stand-up. And welcoming him back to the show. Jeremy, first, it's just so amazing to have you back as Chicago royalty of acting and comedy, of what you and your family have done over the many, many years, providing a billion laughs, a billion minutes of entertainment. So I just want to say thank you just to get started for all that.
Wow, that's exactly what I wanted to hear right now. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Whatever you've done in acting and comedy and stand-up and all of this, from all the movies you've done where you're the main focus of the movie or the show, whichever, and going down, I'm going to get a little more in the nitty-gritty of movies that I'm so passionate about that maybe people don't always mention to you. Like, you stole the movie Singles with about a 2-minute scene as Doug, the supermarket guy who's stoked about Steve DJing. Is that you looking at the role in the script and going, I know what I can do with this. I can almost steal this movie for somebody like Brian. Or is it a director saying, we need Jeremy Piven for this role?
Well, you flatter me because the reality is before Entourage, I did 40 movies that were exactly like the supermarket checkout guy, which is probably the name of the character, because the reality is no one gave me a script. No one had me on any list. Cameron Crowe was panicking and reached out and said, hey, man, can you come in and improvise for us on a lunch break? We need some comedy to stick in here. Look, man, it's an honor. What a gift to be able to create. Someone trusts you. You know, I grew up at the Piven Theater in Evanston. My first job was at Second City, touring around the country with a guy named Chris Farley a million years ago. And because the city of Chicago supports the arts, they show up. They show up for 99-seat houses, little black theaters. Black Lives Matter. That's different. That's different than Black Lives.
It's different.
And by the way, there's so much to unpack comedically right now, and that's why it's so fun to do stand-up. I dropped the gloves. It's going to be truly authentic in what I find funny, and we're living in times where we all need to laugh. So the Vic Theater is one of my favorite theaters, and I cannot wait to be there. And I'll be there, very soon, like June 6th. And Cameron Crowe and other people, when I did the gay Versace salesman in Rush Hour, I had no lines. But the thing is, as you guys know, when you go to see Second City, that's what we do. We improvise. We do sketch comedy. It's our thing. And so when someone says, hey, can you improvise? You go, oh, my God, thank you. And so you get $270 for the day, and you get to live the dream. Chris Tucker made $20 million. So did Jackie Chan. I'm very bitter. And we're gonna unpack all this at the Vic Theater.
What's funny is that you're like, oh, well, obviously, after Entourage, you got to snag some of those more leading. But I recognize you the first time I ever saw you was in Serendipity, which was out before Entourage. So when you came on the screen, I'm like, oh my God, it's Dean.
Yeah. I mean, that's an example of I probably did 9 movies or something like that with Cusack. Mm-hmm. And John Cusack and I, we, at 8 years old, climbed up on stage at the Piven Theater with my parents, and, we were butchering Chekhov. And we were these two children, that would trade off. He would play one night, I would play another. So we grew up on the stage, so that by the time he and I were doing these movies together, and even Grosse Pointe Blank together, where, 10 years, where that's all improvised.
I got to stop you right there, because you don't know how often I just say that to people at parties, like, 10 years! 10 years! 10 years!
And by the way, that's me just trying to stretch out my role. I'm just gonna say the same line 3 or 4 different ways, and hopefully just stay on camera. No, I mean that's basically Johnny and I bouncing it back and forth, and a couple guys that have known each other for forever, and having fun and making it happen. And then by the time Ari Gold came around, that was a tiny role. That was one scene in a pilot with no promise of anything else. I was last on the call sheet. The role was a bit of a fringe player. And so it's our job to get in there and flesh these characters out and hopefully, make them interesting enough to keep them around. And, and we got lucky.
We say chop suey once a day at our house because of you. So you're an icon in this household forever.
It's interesting because when people come and they see my stand-up, right now they can go and look, at my Instagram and see all the posts that I do with my stand-up. But if they haven't done their research, they don't know me as a stand-up. So they're taking a leap of faith. And after they see me, they say to me, "We didn't know you were this funny," which means a lot to me because this is all stuff that's coming from me and how I see the world, and we get to share a laugh together. So all roads lead to stand-up, because you get to perform, but you're now the lead singer-songwriter. You're not a cover band artist anymore.
We're talking with Jeremy Piven, the great Chicagoan, and Friday, June 6th at the Vic. And it's funny when you mention Ari Gold, and I'm not saying this was exaggeration, the greatest TV show of all time. Just ask Kenzie how many times I bring up lines from Ari Gold on Entourage. And then we have a guy on the show here, 26 years old, who wanted to bring up to you about your first TV role, which was the Larry Sanders Show.
Yes. Jeremy, I had a question about Larry Sanders, if that was okay, because I don't feel like that show has necessarily been picked up by my generation in the same way that a Friends or an Office has shows that were before our time. But that show really helped me shape my comedic sensibilities. And I'm curious because you were so young when you did that show, how intimidating was it to share the screen with not only Gary Shandling, but also at times Rip Torn?
I'm so glad that you're finding that, man. It's one of those things where you never know what's going to catch people's attention. Entourage now is catching the attention of the much younger generation, even younger than you, because of COVID. They stayed at home. So now we have this whole new generation checking out Entourage. And with the Larry Sanders Show, who knows what the variable is that will make it accessible to people. But the people that know, the New York Times said it was, the first or second best show of the 90s. And even Jerry Seinfeld, when I run into him, he's got nothing but love for Shandling in that show. And it's not that I was intimidated by them. They were so good. First of all, my first point of concentration was not losing it in the middle of scenes because they were so funny. Just holding it together was difficult because they were such geniuses. But I was kind of ready for the fight because I was in my 20s, but I had been on stage for 20 years. So I was at least ready to contribute.
And you bring up Seinfeld, where you played George for a second there in the pilot episode of that, where you were playing George. And again, you stole that episode without question.
Well, I mean, thank you. I don't think so, but that's another example where I was a regular on a TV show. My first regular series gig, the Larry Sanders Show, and I'm in the parking lot, and Mark Hirschfeld, who was the casting director, stops me and he says, "Hey, Jeremy, I got an audition for you." And I was like, "Yeah, audition? I'm already on a series. I can't do anything else, right?" So he goes, would you audition to play George Costanza on Seinfeld? Now, I didn't have a TV because I'm a stage actor from Chicago. I still think I'm broke. I don't have a TV in my house. I do not have a TV. I've never seen Seinfeld. So he goes, "Yeah, it's the show within the show. Jason Alexander plays George, but you're going to play a version of him on TV." I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to, man." So, I'm just a hungry Chicago actor that can't even do the show. So I knew Jason, from the parking lot. We would say hello to each other, and, he's a great guy, and I'd never seen the show. So I just went in there and did my impersonation because I knew I could understand his accent. Obviously, he's from New York, and I could read in the sides that he's this nebbishy character. So I just kind of threw it out there, and they're like, "Oh, my God, you must be a huge fan of the show." And I'd never seen it. I was like, "Yes, I am."
Jeremy Piven, Friday, June 6th at the Vic with stand-up. And I feel like I'm doing the Chris Farley show now. As you know, Chris Farley, you knew him so well. But I'm just going through the movies that meant things to me, like old school. Most of our audience, cheese. And even for me, a movie, maybe, I don't know how often somebody will bring up Judgment Night to you, Chicago movie where you were with Cuba Gooding Jr., young in the career, Emilio Estevez, and Stephen Dorff. The premise of that movie of going to a Bulls game in a bus and then you get sidetracked off the road and then Chicago is desolate and Dennis Leary is the villain in the hood. Everything about it is incredible.
Yeah, I think it was a documentary. Yeah, it was heavy, man. It was surreal. It was my first big movie. I remember, on one of the leads, I made $50,000. And I was like, I literally thought I was the richest guy who has ever lived. I was like, no one's ever made more money than me. I was like, literally, that was just one of those shows where, like, certain parts of Chicago and that area in particular, there was a sniper attack, and we're up on the roof in that area. We were shooting the south side of Chicago. That's another, I believed, underappreciated movie. Great soundtrack.
Incredible soundtrack.
I remember at one point, we don't want to get too deep into the weeds. It's all I can do not to tell you guys too much. There's a part of me that just wants to tell you everything, and I'm like, do I say everything? I don't know.
We like that, Jeremy.
We're super into that. Yeah.
I was so lucky to be a part of the community in Evanston and Chicago, and people wonder, like, the Chicago actors, they do have a lot of respect out there, and I really believe the variable is the community, because they show up for us. So we're performing in front of audiences, where other towns may not have that from an early age. So we get our reps in because the community cares about the arts. That's pretty heavy. So, coming home, this one on my calendar means more to me than anything the whole year.
And that'll be Friday, June 6th at the Vic. And we care about what you and your family did for all the laughs and also starting so many careers. Thank you, Jeremy Piven, for taking time to talk to us. And we will see you at the Vic. Yeah,
but that being said, after everything that we said, believe me, I'm going to be viciously mediocre on stage. No, I can promise you this, and this is going to sound very grandiose. Everything that I've done will lead to this special that I'm going to do, and what you guys are going to see me do, and we might even shoot the special at the Vic, because it's time to let the hands go, as they say in boxing, and just get raw and honest, and let's get into it. I cannot wait. I'll see you guys on the 6th.
Let's go. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great day.
You too.